Keep This For Me is the story of a woman named Fiona whose mother was abducted and killed by a serial killer when Fiona was only 2.5 years old. And what happens, she's now an adult and she finds out that that serial killer, who was arrested and is now dying in prison, has confessed that he didn't actually kill her mother. She disappeared. So the story really follows Fiona as she goes back to the lakeside town where this crime happened 30 years previously and tries to figure out what actually happened that night.
This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba. In conversations with writers, something magical happens, and as readers, we begin to see them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. And my hope is through these conversations, you learn about their craft, them as a person, and you'll become like me, fiercely loyal, want to read their current book, entire backlist, any future book, or any book they blurb. And when you see their name, you'll want to support them, not only as incredible storytellers, but also the thoughtful individuals you have come to know. So I'm super excited tonight to be talking to Jennifer Fawcett. A brief introduction to Jennifer, who as a kid wanted to be Princess Leia. I mean, who doesn't? And brought her into acting and then to playwriting. She received her MFA from the Iowa Playwrights Workshop and was a founding member of the Working Group Theater. Jennifer's work has been produced in regional theaters across the United States and in the UK. Apples in Winter won the National New Play Network Smith Prize and the Susan Glaspell Award. And the awards don't stop there. Atlas of Mud won the Kennedy Center National Science Playwriting Award. Out of Bounds received the NEFA National Theater Award with Working Group. Birth Witches was nominated for the ATCA/Steinberg New Play Award. But wait, there's more. Jennifer has proven herself just as talented when writing fiction. Beneath the Stairs was her debut novel, and that's how I came to meet her. And I think one of the first things I said to Jennifer was, "This book gave me nightmares," which she took as a compliment, which it was intended. Her second novel, Keep This For Me, had me hooked from the very first page, and I couldn't put it down. So fair warning to all of you listening. So I'm so excited that you're here to talk about Keep This For Me.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Quite welcome. Would you mind giving a brief introduction to Keep This For Me?
Yes, I don't mind. The brief part's always hard for me. So Keep This For Me is the story of a woman named Fiona whose mother was abducted and killed by a serial killer when Fiona was only 2.5 years old. And what happens, she's now an adult and she finds out that the serial killer, who was arrested and is now dying in prison, has confessed that he didn't actually kill her mother. She disappeared. So it's the story that really follows Fiona as she goes back to the lakeside town where this crime happened 30 years previously and tries to figure out what actually happened that night. The story follows 3 points of view. Mm-hmm. So there's Fiona, who is trying to figure out what actually happened that night. And through that process actually really starts to get to know who her mother was. Another point of view is that of her mother, Anna, the night of that abduction. And then the third point of view is actually a male point of view, and it is the son of the serial killer, who is dealing with his own unwanted legacy of being the son of a monster.
Yeah, I will say these 3 perspectives blend so well in tracing, the story. You kind of go back in time a little bit to things that were happening with Anna's perspective, current day, and then a little bit back and forth in the past with Jason. So wonderfully told, because you don't often get to hear that perspective of somebody who's a legacy to a serial killer.
Yeah.
How did you decide to choose that point of view?
Well, it kind of came through several things. I've always been sort of fascinated by the idea of monsters, not monsters with like horns and fangs and claws, but like people
who walk among us.
people who are sort of seen as monster, and then beyond that, the people who are around them, their family. So that's always been really interesting to me, because I actually think the play I have a play called Apples in Winter that's about a mother who is making the last meal for her son who's on death row, and she, so he has killed people, he's on death row, and so he is, quote unquote, a monster, and she's sort of she's impacted by that. She's almost like the invisible victim of that. But it also came from the true story that is the inspiration for the book. So, which is, many years ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop looking for a play idea, because I was playwriting at that point, and I stumbled across this little newspaper article about a man who was a long haul trucker who had just been arrested for abducting and killing 2 young women. And what was odd about this man was that his father had done the very same thing. And so journalists were speculating, like father, like son, like that was actually like the headline. Yes. Could this be genetic? And I don't know that it's something that they will ever be able to prove is genetic, because hopefully the pool for that research is too small. But I have to think that if your parent is a violent criminal, it feels to me that you would wonder, is that in me? Is that part of, is that part of me? And does it impact me somehow? So I was really interested in that idea of this boy, because Jason is a boy. He's only 11 when his father is arrested, and 13 when he's put away for life. But so he's a kid, and he hasn't done anything, but he gets this label of monster put on him because of his father's actions. And then he grows up with that label and wrestling with this unwanted legacy of violence, and this question of, is it in me? Because he's angry. He is an angry young man. Mm-hmm. Is it sort of inherent? Is it just sort of part of him and it's going to come out no matter what? Or is it also going to potentially come out because of how he has been treated? Because he has been treated. He and his mother stay in the same community and are treated as pariahs. And so I was really fascinated by that, and by the parallels that I could see between this father-son relationship, between the son, Jason, sort of wrestling with who his father was. He doesn't have a relationship with him. His father's sitting in jail, and he doesn't visit him until the end, this one final visit when his father makes this confession. But even though he doesn't have an active relationship with him, his father is still a presence in his life, and he is wrestling with his own identity and how it connects to his father. And then Fiona, my protagonist, who has a missing mother, and she is an absence in her life, and her mother was stamped with victim. And that has also sort of trickled down to Fiona and is her unwanted legacy, right? Because that's sort of like claim to fame, like, oh my, your mother was the victim of a serial killer. It's like, if anyone finds out, it's the first thing they want to know. And it's one of those titillating details. But when you live inside it, what is that? Right. So both of these people are kind of wrestling with, who am I with this blank on my family tree? And a blank that has been a person that has been reduced to nothing more than a label.
Wow. I mean, it kind of, for me, brings up that dynamic of, nature versus nurture, right? And you talk about Jason kind of carrying this burden of being labeled a monster and questioning whether or not he's capable of the same things, or would someone want to go into those and take those actions because that's who his father was? Or does it turn him to be more mindful, to say, I'm aware of what can happen. And so the whole thing, like, thoughts become words become, actions, behavior, that type of thing. Is someone, I want to say, smart enough, emotionally intelligent enough to be able to understand that's part, but that it's not something we always have to act on.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
can we say that's just who I am because that's who somebody else was? I mean, it's a very interesting question. And I imagine as a writer, a lot of your stories start with the what if,
Yes.
and that fascinating kind of exploring that, which you do throughout this story, which is fabulous.
Yeah, I'm just really fascinated in the sort of going into the psychology of it, and I'm really interested in these in characters where it's really sticky. Like there's not really a clear path. It's morally very gray. I mean, obviously, like if Jason, so he definitely has violent urges, and if he acts on those for whatever reason, I mean, then he that's not right. That is, but I'm really curious about why do we do what we do, and on the female side of it with Fiona and her mother, Fiona is also dealing with Fiona's dealing with postpartum mental health issues, and for her it's manifesting, or it has manifested as postpartum psychosis, which is terrifying because she's questioning, she wanted to be a wonderful mother even though she didn't feel like she had a mother, and is struggling so much with this new role of motherhood because she has a very young child. And then she finds out over the course of the book that her mother was also struggling with postpartum mental health. And is that part of the reason why she disappeared? And is that something that she, again, this unwanted legacy, like that's going to be part of who I am. Like I'm going to, being a bad mother. And so yeah, I all of that was sort of like very, to me, that's all very like fun to chew on mentally as a as a writer.
Well, it's very fun to chew on as a reader when you capture it in this way, with characters who I find to be very relatable. The story's set in a different time period. So, Anna and her husband, Ben, are coming back from a party. Their car breaks down and a long haul trucker stops.
Yeah. That part was true. That was part of the true story.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I think about. Like, they didn't have cell phones.
No.
There's no AAA. You rely on like the inherent goodness of people and how sometimes that can go awry. And like that, I think about how it could have happened to anybody I know.
Yes.
Absolutely. They're ordinary people placed in extraordinary circumstances, but very easy to understand how that could easily happen.
Yeah. And what really initially pulled me into the whole story was, going back to that newspaper article that I was reading, it talked about, so it was about the son who had just been arrested, but there was a mention of the father who had been a long haul trucker and had picked people up all over the country and had killed them. And the last two victims that he killed were a young couple who were out driving for whatever reason, and their car broke down and they waved down a truck because that's what you do when your car breaks down, and you don't have a cell phone because it's like 1981, because I think the actual story happened in the early 80s. And I was so fascinated by it is a random event, right? Like it's just bad luck.
Yeah, if wrong place, wrong time.
Wrong place, wrong time, exactly. And yet from that one misstep, that like if we'd left 5 minutes earlier, if we left 5 minutes later, if right, from that wrong place, wrong time, random event, all of this stuff kind of ripples out. And that with an act of violence like this, both families are really feeling the ripples. I think of it as like ripples.
Yeah.
For years and years and years, and yet it's all coming out of this event that didn't have a reason.
Yeah, like a precipitating factor to say, you stole my boyfriend. So that's
he didn't even know their names.
No.
Right? Like he wouldn't have known their names. It just was a random act of violence. And how do we, as people, as sense making, logic making, we look for patterns, all this, we want reasons for things. Correct. How do you grapple with the sort of unreasonableness of that? Because you're left with the aftermath, which is this, people are dead.
Yeah.
People are dead. Your father's a criminal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm fascinated. I think so. One of the things I think we do is we tend to put labels on things because that helps us make sense of things and be able to kind of rationalize the unfathomable, and at the same time, underneath that, for both Jason, whose dad is, in prison for being a serial killer, and for Fiona, whose mom disappeared, the underlying thing is this profound sense of grief,
yes,
sense of loss of what you don't have. You no longer have a father.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer have a mother, and how does that shape your decisions and impact your life moving forward? And we can see that it has an impact on both their lives.
Yeah. And it's not fair.
No,
it's not fair. Like for Jason, I think there's a point where he talks about when his father was around, they had a decent house and they had cable and he had a bike and video games and he had a sort of normal childhood.
Yeah.
And all of that has been stripped away. And his mom and him are now the town pariah. She struggles to find work. They're living on she's got, everything has been sucked down because of something that had nothing to do with either of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. And that's the thing I just thought about was would I, if that were me, not to say that my dad is a serial killer, but
I hope not.
No, not. Would I stay in the same town?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also 1980s when that happened. So things are different. And people, I think, especially women, didn't have that same sense of agency. All of a sudden, this is thrust and she's, the primary breadwinner and has to raise a young man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it would be I feel like it would be the obvious thing for to move away, but there's something about the characters that I could imagine them also kind of, especially the mother, the serial killer's wife, Jason's mother, Carol, that's her name, kind of also digging in and going, no, why do I have to
correct. It's not fair. I didn't
do anything. It's not fair. This is, why do I have to completely uproot myself? And there is something but even Jason himself, he grows up and again, he could leave, but there's something that kind of tethers him to this place. And that he I don't know whether it's a sense that he feels he deserves it, maybe. I don't have a really logical reason to point to that. I feel like that's an emotional decision, but it's an emotional decision to me that makes sense for the character.
Absolutely. You are an esteemed professor and teach creative writing. And so, all of the things. I read something and I am strictly visceral. I'm so glad I don't know how it's done so that I can be delighted by the words every single time. And there's something very visceral and relatable to Jason and
he
to
was
Carol.
The most fun to write.
Yeah. But
I don't know what that says about me, but...
this is one of those books that makes me want everybody to read it so that I can talk about it because, what keeps him there? I mean, maybe that's where he had his last good memories of his father as a child who would bring him, trinkets, souvenirs from the long haul trucking. But to know that he was thought about when his dad wasn't home and when he came home from his trips, they'd spend time together. So maybe that's it. Whereas Fiona's father, Ben, was not going to go there anymore. Circumstance, same event, but different reaction.
Yeah, different reaction. Yeah. And I think a lot of time that we do as people, we make these emotional decisions. They're not necessarily the most logical decisions, but emotionally it's just I know I'm doing this. And as someone who creates characters, I love trying to kind of dig under dig down and figure out where is that decision coming from? I mean, why did Eddie, the father, the serial killer, choose to kill this couple? I mean,
close to home. I mean,
close to home too. The real guy never gave a reason for why he killed people. He literally said, I had some time to kill.
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, that's what he said. So he never had and so thinking about him, and what is it that he makes a decision like, I'm gonna, and I don't know, but so it's, but I think that there's something very I mean, I don't give you a big answer. I don't give you an answer why he kills him. He just does. But that's also sort of part of who he is. He's impulse. It's his impulse. He wants something. If he wants something, he takes it. He has a violent impulse and he follows it. And his son has a violent impulse and he wrestles with it.
It's so intriguing to stop and think. And I think it's a lot like life. We don't always have answers for why the things happen to us, the bad things, and wanting to think we're more than the bad things that happen to us.
Yeah, or why we make the stupid decisions.
Right, exactly.
Like, why did you do that? I don't know.
Yeah. So Jason recovers enough to end up dating Samantha, Sam, and they have a child. And so she's involved in this story because she is intrigued to know more about her grandfather, Eddie, right, who's in prison for doing this. Do you want to talk a little bit about, a teen's angst?
Lily? Yeah. So
Lily.
Yeah, so this it goes beyond the one generation into the next generation. So Lily is the somewhat unwanted child. She's so Jason in his early 20s has a relationship with this young woman, Sam. And Sam is an interesting character. There's a question of is she actually interested in Jason, or is she more interested in being able to be close to such the darkness of his family. But she has a child, and Lily is also wrestling with this legacy of what her grandfather did. She purposely chooses the same last name. Her father kept his last name, so it's the serial killer's last name, so it's famous. And Lily, partly in wanting to have a relationship with her father, takes her father's last name, even though he's kind of estranged from her. And because of that, she's relentlessly bullied as a kid because of like, ooh, you're the granddaughter of a serial killer, and yet I think that there's also something about it that is really, she's very drawn to, she's fascinated by. I think she's fascinated by that idea of darkness and darkness inside. I personally, think we all have the capability inside us for incredible darkness, cruelty, but we also have the capability inside us for courage. We have the capability inside us for great love. I think humans have a huge range inside them that they could of directions that they could go. And fortunately, most people don't go in the violent direction. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't. And I think Lily, as she's 17, and she's kind of wrestling with the idea of, is what was in my grandfather, is it in me too? Could I do that? Do I? And she also wonders, do I have to atone for that? Is there a way to kind of make reparations? Because she befriends Fiona.
Yeah.
And she and talks about wanting to try and make peace with the victims' families who are all over the country, and again, something about that, it's not necessarily logical, but it rings so emotionally true for me. And she's kind of both. She's both grappling with the darkness and could I do that? But also grappling with, how do I clean up this mess?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's the thing when I asked you, at the very beginning to give a brief overview of the book, I realized why it's so difficult is there's so many different layers, so many different storylines. So you have the storyline with Jason, his father, and then his somewhat estranged daughter, Lily, right? And at the same time, you have Fiona, and then they intersect when she comes back after hearing something that Eddie, the serial killer, had said upon his deathbed. So she comes back to a town she'd been gone for a long time. And that's when, intersecting storylines, David, which was like her best friend growing up, and Lily kind of intersect.
Yes.
And part of the reason they intersect is because now another woman who had parked on the side of the road is missing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it looks like it's history repeating. What's going on, copycat, or is that and when I was writing this, I was actually really I was kind of thinking of like there's 3 families who are impacted by this event, by this roadside abduction that happens 30 years previously. 3 families are impacted. There's the serial killer's family, there's the victim's family, and then it's a smaller part of the book, but there's also the police officer's family. So David, who is Fiona's best friend as a kid, his dad is he's the sort of like the lead of trying to find Fiona's mom, and he's the police officer who's trying to solve the crime when her mom is initially missing and they don't know what happened to her, and he fails. He fails because they don't find her, and that failure also ripples down and then impacts David, who also becomes a police officer. So he's also got this sort of like, his dad was seen as the big hero, but he's kind of a fallen hero. And so now David is in the position where now he's got to investigate another roadside disappearance, and he feels like he's being put through the same test, and he's terrified that he's going to fail. So I was always just really interested in this idea of like 3 families. Again, David's family is a much smaller amount of focus, but for me, it's still very important because I think they would be impacted too. Because again, his parent, there was a failure there.
Right. It's that whole like haunted by somebody's previous action. So it makes me think about that. Then he follows in his father's footsteps, and is it because he wants to atone, for what his father wasn't unable to do prior to the introduction of the missing woman in present day in the book? Yeah. Is he wanting to atone and be able to solve things so that, they kind of reinvigorate his dad's reputation? And, you talk to and you read enough crime and enough mysteries, there's always a case that tends to haunt a police officer or detective, one that they got away that couldn't be solved. So you have that interesting dynamic, right? And it appears to be a copycat, a repeat. Yeah. And then the other thing that's interesting is, this great understanding of wanting to know why, which is what propels Fiona to come back to a place that she hasn't been to catch up with David, who she lost touch with over the years because they left rather abruptly. And she talks in the book about David being a concrete thinker. Things are black or things are white, things are up or down. And concrete thinkers and people who are seeking to understand why, that creates an interesting dynamic, dare I say, tension between the two of them and how they're approaching things. And as a police officer, having to go by policy and procedure and not gut. Yes. So. Yes.
And the problem that he's running into is that it's implied that his father, one of the reasons why maybe his father started out leading this investigation and was seen as a hero, and then as time passed and they didn't find Fiona's mother, he started to impede the investigation just by kind of like taking up too much space and holding too tightly. And now that it's happening again, is David actually being kind of blinded by the past and therefore not being able to see the present clearly, because his assumption immediately is that maybe it's Jason Ward who's done this. But yeah, he is I think of him as a very kind of, for him, it's also maybe a coping mechanism of like the sort of black and white thinking, right and wrong, black and white. Whereas I think it has to do with Fiona's grief as well. It's not black and white.
No, and it's not linear.
It's not linear. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
She's kind of put distance, and then this phone call that she gets kind of throws it all right back as if it were yesterday that it had happened.
Yeah. And maybe some of the distance that she's created is not necessarily the most emotionally healthy distance, right? She's kind of just like cut off like she's refused to return to this lakeside town is the place where her grandparents had their summer cottage, and she spent, all of her summers up until she was 12 there, and it was such a wonderful place, but it was also the location where they were when her mother was abducted, so it's mixed. I'm really interested, I think, also in just these things that are sort of like dual, like so St. Rose and the cottage is both a place of warmth and family and nurturing and her childhood, and it's a place of sadness and grief and loss because it's where they were when her mother left. And the same way that the lake can be both, destructive and also be what can save you.
Right. As somebody who lives like a half a mile from Lake Erie, and who is a rower, absolutely. Things will look incredibly calm on the surface, but what's happening underneath, or what can change in the blink of an eye with a storm front that rolls in across the lake.
Wow.
You just don't know. And in the book, there's talk of, research papers, projects being done by students, and about things being
all the wrecks,
all the shipwrecks, and of course, we have them here, in Lake Erie. But it's that whole thing too. I think, can you translate to a person, right? Like there's the surface, the mask that we kind of present to people, and then there's the stuff that's really happening underneath.
Yeah.
And people aren't always what they seem. Things aren't always quite what they seem, and who do you trust and who don't you trust?
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 And I had so much fun investigating all of the like shipwrecks and ghost stories that I had to work it in somehow.
It's true. There's a line
so
in the
fascinating
book talking about the souls underneath
the
water. Yeah. And I just thought, like, holy cow, like what I'm rowing over top of.
Yes.
Kind of has
and I think of it when I swim, like, because like any body of water in the summer, it's sparkling and beautiful, and there's so many people, and it's really fun. But it's also, this is a powerful thing that can turn on you, and
absolutely.
And like you said, like a storm system can come in, and I freak myself out sometimes when I'm swimming. I usually am swimming in pools, so when I go and swim in a lake, I'm like, what's underneath me? What could reach up from below? Yes. And it was so fascinating to read these stories of the shipwrecks and these ships that just sort of disappear, or the rum runners. I mean, that's all in history. And then like these, ghosts, there's ghost stories all over the place. And I find that idea of a place just being haunted is really fascinating to me. And because I feel like everything's in layers, right? Like all these places that we live in now, but we're on top of all the layers of all the people and the stories that came.
That, as well as physically. I mean, Cleveland is built on a swamp, like on water, right? So yeah, you got to be careful how far down you dig if you're looking to build. I think about that, and I think about the ghosts and the spirits of that. I mean, you should come visit and go to Mansfield Reformatory, which is like an hour south of me. It's where they filmed Shawshank.
Oh,
and it is haunted. You can actually spend the night there if you want to.
Oh God, no. I can write about it. I can't do it.
Exactly. I said a hearty no thank you to that. And I went with one of my friends, and we were walking through, and she's like, Jen, we got to get out of here. And I'm looking around like, what? Everything seems fine. And she was a little bit more in tune to, and she just beelined out of there. And I was like, okay, well, I'll follow her. But that there was a flood, underneath where they kept prisoners in solitary confinement. And instead of reporting it, they paved over it. So it is haunted. Yeah. And unsettling, but
very unsettling. So, I mean, fun, but unsettling. Yes. I know. And I am a big chicken. I will just put that out there right now. I can write a scary book.
Yeah, you can.
Because that's what I can send my characters into the places that I myself would never go.
Exactly. Right.
It's always the fun of writing.
Yeah, exactly.
I make them do it. I make them go into the scary basement, and I wouldn't
dare you, Fiona, to go into. You have another great line. Memories are slippery things. If you try too hard to hold on, they'll slide away and never come back. And I just think about us, you talk about the 3 families that are impacted in this book and how it's one event, but how each of them experienced it differently.
Yeah.
So their memories are going to be different.
Yes.
And I just find that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something, I mean, and we've all experienced it too, where you and a friend or partner or whatever can have like a completely different interpretation or memory of what happened. I find that really fascinating because I feel that we build our own personal stories out of our memories. And
We
if our
do.
memories are false, what does that say about our personal stories and our identity? I mean, it's completely fascinating to me how and I guess kind of alarming in some ways, but like how a whole sense of identity could be on this foundation that is very shaky because it's actually, oh, but that didn't happen. They never said that or something like that, right?
Or you perceived it to be different than what somebody intended. So, of course, your memory of it is going to be different, even if you can agree on the same words, what was intended versus what you felt can be completely different as well.
Yeah. And with Fiona, I kept thinking, like, if it was me, if I had lost my mother when I was very young, she's 2.5 when her mother goes. So she's had 2.5 years of daily life with her mother, except that a child that young isn't retaining those memories. And I mean, when I was doing research about it, it was because it was like, why don't we remember? Like, why don't we remember being 1 year old or being 2 years old? And it's been interesting because I have a child.
Aww.
I ask him things and, his memories changed. Like his memory now of COVID, for example, very hazy because he was 4 when COVID hit.
Okay.
He kind of remembers it, but not really. But so and I've asked him all as he's growing up, like as soon as he could start talking to me, I'll ask him, like, do you remember? And but thinking about, like, if it was me and if I'd lost a parent, but I knew that I had 2.5 years of that parent in my life, how desperate I would be to try and access some kind of memory. It's like, it's got to be in my brain somewhere.
Right.
And that idea of a memory kind of dream thing that kind of comes to her, to me, that felt like that could be a possibility. There are people who claim to be able to remember very early memories. Like there are people who are like, I have a memory of being 2 but do they, or is it
all the stories you've been told about when you were 2? When I was 2, my mom made me a cake that looked like a bunny and had coconut on it. And
mine too.
Do I really remember? Do I really remember that, or is just because of the story that's been told over time? Where I can't imagine not remembering.
Absolutely. And I know that some of my memories are actually just pictures from the photo album that I've kind of animated.
Yes.
And I can't really separate them in my mind. They to me, they feel true. To me, that is true, but it might not be true.
I know it's a very interesting thing, because you talk about Fiona wanting to do research, right? Because she has these glimpses of memory of things with her mom, but she was 2.5, right? So she says, Fiona's like, I will read anything I can to find, or anything I can find about memory development in young children, anything that will give me proof that the memories of her are in me somewhere, even if I can't access them.
Yeah.
I just think another sense of grief, like like you said, you should remember, like some people can, but she keeps thinking, Fiona does, that if there's just one thing she does, if she stands upside down for like 10 minutes, then those memories will come to her. Or if she drinks with her right hand, like all these things that you're so desperate, because her mom, looking and seeing from her perspective, was fantastic.
Yeah.
She was incredibly smart. She was a fantastic swimmer. And at the same time, you bring up, both her mom and Fiona struggle with postpartum and talking about mental health. And back in the 80s when, Anna, her mom, was the mom of Fiona, that wasn't something you readily talked about.
No.
Like her friend Anna, Fiona's mom, her friend Tia.
Yeah.
Were like, don't tell the doctor that, because then you'll kind of be labeled. And I think, like, okay, have we gotten any better? I mean, we've somewhat destigmatized some mental health things, but
I feel like there's more of a conversation of it now, but I also am looking for it more now. But I mean, even when I had my child like 10 years ago, I don't feel like anyone was talking to me about the complexity of the postpartum mental health picture. Like, it was still kind of depression, but it's much more than that. And it wasn't, I have a kind of long-standing interest in the way that mental health there's a stigma around what it is, because we can't see it, right? Like we can look at an x-ray and point to a broken bone and that sort of thing. And so, we don't think of it as a personal flaw if somebody has a broken bone. We don't think of it as a personal flaw if somebody has cancer.
Right.
But if somebody is struggling with mental illness, or like addiction, right? It can be seen as, that is a sign of weakness. That is personal. That's a personal flaw. And that's been a long-standing interest of mine. And so kind of like weaving that into all of the expectations around motherhood. And that was really interesting to me. And again, this, we want the story we tell ourselves about ourselves sort of thing, and how mental health can also interrupt that story.
Right. I mean, you talk about Anna's describing things as blanks.
Yeah.
Where she has these moments where she's just kind of unsure of herself and where she is. And should she be a mom? Does she have the capacity to take care of this amazing human being?
Yeah. I mean, when I had my son, I guess I have a very active imagination, but I've had, the most horrific scenarios would come into my head that I could see so clearly happening. Like, all these things that could possibly happen to this little innocent, like this helpless little child that I was, me, the big idiot, was responsible for. Like, who gave me permission to like I, don't know anything. But also I was like, where is this coming from? Like, and am I, by envisioning this, am I going to make it happen? Or, and so with Anna, it was sort of taking that a step further, in that she gets this feeling of like, I can envision falling down the stairs. I can envision my child choking. I can envision dropping them slipping in the bath. Like, oh my goodness, like there's just so many, it's like a list of horrors. And by envisioning them, am I going to make them happen? Am I foreseeing? So that the blank idea kind of came out of that fear and being kind of frozen.
Just think the characters all experience something different, but yet there's that similarity that they're all questioning if they're capable of something. And just because they can see it or feel it viscerally, does that mean that they will then act on it? And to me, I find it really intriguing, to understand the why. I mean, people do things all the time.
Yeah.
Just trying to understand the why. And then how do you live when there is no why, when there is no concrete answer? Because
we want a why.
I
think we need to be able to point to something like, this happened because of that. And yet sometimes there isn't a why. And that is, I think, there's something about not having a why that makes dealing with grief, I would think, very, very hard.
Yeah, there's a moment in the book, several moments in the book where, Fiona, her family comes back because they want to honor her mom with a memorial. Her aunt says to her, so we can show her that she's still in our hearts. And Fiona's like, show who? Like, we're not forgetting her. And then she says when she would run into people wouldn't know what to say because her mom was never found. Then I think there's a line in here where you describe it as like this perpetual wake. People don't know what to do, that we say sense of closure all the time, but that somewhat of a resolution to stop that questioning, which I would think would never stop.
Yeah, knock on wood, have not ever had someone disappear from my life.
Me either.
But I've got to imagine that if someone disappears, it is a hole. It's like you don't get any kind of closure, whether you believe closure exists or not. You don't have an answer.
No.
And you know that like they're somewhere. They are somewhere. And how awful that must be, because you're in this sort of state of suspension.
Right. And like knowing that you're still here and alive and needing to go on with your life and not sure what to do with, you're frozen or suspended or stuck.
Yeah.
Which is not a fun place to be. And I would think it would be like this perpetual feeling of stuckness. And when you do move forward, maybe you still feel guilty for moving forward.
Yeah.
Because what if all of a sudden that person was found tomorrow? And
exactly,
this, like, new family, and you're not in the same house. Like, how would they know where to find you? Like, maybe now today, because we have computers and I don't know, we're one step away from chips, but but I just find it fascinating. And looking at the story, because of the young woman in present day in the book who goes missing, or cars found on the side of the road, is this a copycat? I mean, one of the first things that the police do is look at her social media.
Yes.
And I thought, like, this is the world we now live in. And can those be essentially clues to finding out where we are, where we like to be? Is our geotagging on so that people can see where we were when we took particular photos or posted things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's the first thing they would do, is like look at social media and try and figure out, is there any kind of a clue? It's just because, again, it feels like this sort of random, like, what? Like, her car, it seems, ran out of gas. She stopped, and then she's just gone, but her car's still there. And what happened? And again, how does somebody just vanish?
Yeah. And then in today's day and age, in any day and age in police investigations, the difference between being a victim, being a suspect, and how carefully you tread that line so that somebody is not falsely accused of something. I think of the Richard Jewell, Atlanta Olympic Center bombing, that he was just a security guard trying to protect people. But because of his actions, they assumed he was the one that planted the bomb, and it pretty much derailed his life.
Yeah.
So how careful, I mean, I could never be a police officer. I mean, that job is just incredibly difficult. But just all the different layers and nuances and how you have to act so that you don't destroy somebody's life if they're
innocent. Yeah. But you also have this time crunch, and you've got a family. I mean, in this case, there's a family that, like, they go there and they're like, we don't think that you can handle this investigation. And are you doing this? And are you doing that? And how could they not? If it was me, if someone in my life disappeared, I feel like I would be in the police station going, what are you doing? How are you solving this? Like, what are we, like, because I don't know how you sit still in that, when you're in that situation. And again, when you're in that sort of state of suspension and waiting.
Right. And I think in this book, this is where I learned that it's not really a real rule that you have to wait 24 hours before you can report somebody missing.
I might be wrong.
We've kind of been programmed, I think.
I mean, I think the circumstances too of, like, the car being found and the person not being there also, I think, it seems like foul play. Basically, it seems like foul play. You've got, like, the sister couldn't get in, the young woman she's driving late at night and she's not answering her phone and that sort of thing. And so the sister starts making phone calls and is just looking for her and can't find her. And then the car is found and they run the plate and find out it's this person who this other lady over here was looking for. And I think it's the combination that makes it look like, like foul play. Like, this car's in the middle of nowhere and it's just sitting there. And then there was also, she was on the phone with her friend and said, oh, someone's pulling over. I'm going to get out and see if I can get some help. And that's sort of the last information that we have. So I think it's all of that put together that kind of makes an assumption of foul play.
Absolutely. I think about the cars that I will pass on occasion that are broken down by the side of the road, and I'm thinking, should I be calling and reporting these in? But they're on pretty high traveled areas. So I
Right.
would, but
Yeah.
still, I mean, these are the things that make you think when you read a book, like, wow, what would I do? And what if
Yeah.
that was, if I had done it sooner, would they have found whoever sooner?
Yeah. Yeah. And I certainly hope in terms of all of I really wrestled with, like I love reading police procedurals, but I've
Mhm.
never written one, and I don't feel like I have nearly the amount of knowledge that I would need to be able to write a police procedural, because you have to understand exactly all the steps of an investigation. And I did speak to a detective, a retired detective, and sort of he talked me through sort of some of the things that would be done with the case sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's the fun part of doing research for this sort of thing is I get to talk to an expert, and I basically, what I do is I present them with the case of like, okay, well, here's what I've got, and then
Right.
how would you approach this in your level of expertise? So like I
Right.
spoke to a doctor, and I spoke to a lawyer, and like a defense lawyer, and I spoke to a retired detective. And so it was really interesting to be able to go, okay, well, here's the exact scenario, right? Like, here's the location. And so how would you, but hopefully I haven't made any mistakes with all of the steps of an investigation. I might have. Someone will let me know, I'm sure.
I'm sure. The other thing that I found really interesting is the people that like to be close to darkness, whether it was like people wanting to know Fiona more because her mom was a victim of a serial killer, or it was Jason because his dad is a serial killer, and the fascination, dare I say, morbid.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that sounds judgmental.
But it's like our interest in true crime, right? Like, I like true crime podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm just as guilty of sort of rubbernecking if I drive past an accident as anybody else.
Yeah.
We do have a kind of fascination with darkness, I think. And so and I know that there are definitely people who, like, serial killers get fan clubs and this, like all that sort of thing, which is icky. But I feel like it also feels there's something in human nature that we kind of want to, I think Carol says it's kind of want to touch the darkness.
Yes.
But then be able to
take a
pull our
step
hand away, take a step back.
Yes.
Yes.
So interesting. I could talk to you for the rest of the day because I think this is such a fabulous book and touches on so many different facets, and seeing things from Carol's perspective. I mean, she was married. So did she ever suspect at any point her husband, or did her son ever at any point? I mean, I know he was 11 and then 13 when his dad was sentenced, but a lot of people say I had no clue.
Yeah. And maybe he didn't. I don't know. Yeah.
And then the impact it has. Like, Carol has done nothing wrong, but she basically loses her job and then is struggling to make ends meet because she's like guilty by association, even though none of her actions prove that.
Yes. But there was a graveyard behind her house and she didn't know. Yeah. And again, that's true to the real world. And then I know that there are lots of families out there. I mean, the families of people who have done horrible, violent things. Like, we don't really hear about them very much. They tend to disappear, or are disappeared because they are kind of made invisible. But their impact, I mean, they're definitely
without a doubt. I mean, they have just as much grief, for the victims, I think, but also for the person that they thought the person was that they married and created a family with. And
but that's got to be a very complicated grief. And I mean, questioning yours, I would imagine you're questioning yourself, like, how could I not have seen this? And did I know? And
just turn away, or, I mean, in hindsight, we look back on things and we're like, oh, they're the signs I should have seen. But that's only because you have some context now by which to view those separate interactions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. This has been an absolute pleasure. So we're going to wrap up with Story's End. Final 5 questions.
Oh boy. Okay. Are these hard ones? There's going to be hard ones? Okay.
No. What is the square root? No, I'm kidding.
Oh no.
You alluded to it earlier, but are you a fan of open water, such as lakes, and are you a swimmer?
I am a swimmer. I'm not a swimmer like Anna was, who did a Great Lake crossing. I am a swimmer and I love open water, but I can freak myself out, especially after writing this.
Absolutely.
About what lies below.
Yeah. What's your favorite time of day?
Ooh, transition times. So early morning or evening?
Do you swim early in the morning or in the evening? Just curious.
I would if I was by a place to swim. Yeah, I mean, I love the idea. Being on water when the sun is rising. I mean, it's stunning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually so still,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very magical. I don't live by a big body of water. I really wish I did.
Yeah. We row in the evenings because we're adults, and to row at sunset is pretty cool.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet that must be amazing.
It is amazing. Is there something that is always part of your writing routine?
Naps.
So all the stuff that you're thinking about kind of coalesces.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of taking a lot of desk naps.
Oh, that's actually been shown to improve productivity.
Well, there you go. There is something about, especially early on, when I'm really kind of wrestling with what is the story, that I find myself sometimes going into a bit of a dream state. There's a fine line, though, there between like the dream state that's productive and then just the straight up, now I'm just snoozing. But the sleeping part is kind of a part of it.
Okay. What is your iPhone wallpaper?
A picture of my son at a very early age. I think he's 1.5.
Aw, itty bitty.
Yeah, he's got big chubby cheeks.
Aw. And then the last question, what song would you always include on a road trip playlist?
Something by Radiohead.
Perfect.
Probably something by Radiohead, yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to say a huge thank you to those of you who are listening, and a huge thank you to Jennifer Fawcett. We've been talking about Keep This For Me, which is her most recent book, published 2 months ago. Is it 2 months old?
Not just one and a bit. October the 7th.
It still has the chubby cheeks.
Yeah, it still has chubby cheeks, yes.
Exactly. And so to figure out who else is visiting, go to storiedaccount.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.